You need to use the
Here we
microphone.
go, yeah.
You need to use the
We're on.
microphone
We're gonna get
when
ready
you
to
speak.
I'm gonna introduce you.
So we're just gonna have that
Well,
up
we
here?
have two,
Yeah. We have two.
so that's yours, and we'll share
So
this.
we clip. So am I clipping this, or are we just
No,
holding it? We're
we're
just
just gonna pass it.
we're just
back
gonna pass it back and forth. Okay.
Gentlemen.
But
Here we go.
but get in on it
Here
though.
we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Hello, Matt.
How you doing,
Hey.
Al? Glad to see you
Hey.
made it today. Jeffrey.
Hey, nice to be here.
Steven.
Hello, hello.
Okay, let me introduce our, what you want to call them, panel, or whatever you want to call you guys. All right, we have Steve Foster, Jeffrey Johnson, and what's your name again? Alan?
Yeah, Alan.
Alan Herman.
Yeah, something with an H. Yeah.
All of us combined are some former drum students of Joe Morello. We thought we would gather here today and discuss our memories with Joe, what he's done with us, how he's directed us into becoming better musicians. And I hope I don't use that word musicians wrong, because we're drummers and they don't consider us musicians. But that's okay. Anyway, let's hand it over to Steven. You want to introduce yourself, Steve?
Yeah, my name is I'm Steve Forster, and let's see. I first met Joe, well, one time when he was doing a concert at Gladiators Arena in well, somewhere on Route 46 in the wilds of New Jersey, and I walked up to him, introduced myself, and had been enamored with his playing. And since I think with me it started with Far More Drums when I heard that, and it really changed my life, as I think it did with a lot of people. And I always wondered what it must be able to be like to be able to do that. I'll never know, but that was certainly my inspiration. Like some people might wonder what it's like to play center field for the Yankees or hit a home run. But Joe's playing was amazing. And then later I met him one time at Robbie's Music Store when he was doing a clinic. I guess it was 1967 probably.
Around 18 or around 18 or
No, Route 46 again.
they moved?
Robbie's Music in Wayne. It was in Wayne, New Jersey.
All right.
And he did a clinic, and he had a group playing with him with Buddy Terry. And Joe was late to the clinic, certainly characteristic of him. And I had done a drawing, a big drawing, a cartoon with Joe in the middle, and then all kinds of bizarre ideas surrounding him. I gave him the cartoon, just why, I don't know, just I wanted to give him something, I think. Anyway, he played with Buddy and his group, and then asked me to hang around. I did, and when he was talking to Buddy, he gave him his phone number, which I remembered. It was 373-7747, which is defunct now, but I remembered it. And then at the same time, I was going to school in Newark at Rutgers, and I was walking down the street, and I happened to be passing somebody that played drums, and he said, did you know that Morello's teaching now? And I said, no, I didn't know that. It was shortly after the quartet broke up, so it must have been the end of '67, beginning of '68. And I remembered his phone number. This is about 6 months after the clinic at Robbie's, and I called him up and asked him if he was teaching. He said he wasn't, and if I wanted to come over anyway. And he was living in Irvington at the time, and I went over there, and Bill McCullough was there. I remember, one of his students, and he had Bill play triplets for me at 208 or something like that with his left hand. It was pretty impressive. But anyway, I played a couple things for him, and he took me on as a student, and asked me what I was doing that night, because he had to go to New York to do a radio show with Marion McPartland. So I took him over there and dropped him off around 8 o'clock. He said maybe 6 o'clock, whatever it was, said he'd see me at 8. And he came in about 10:45. And I was just sitting at this bar, Schaefer's, and he brought Marion in, introduced me, and she pulled some molding off the back seat of my car when she got into the car. And I don't know, that was I guess my first meeting with him. And how did you get to meet Joe, Alan?
Oh, well, I saw the album, this Take Five album, and I got it, and listened to Take Five, and it just blew me away. You know, that was it for me. So then I started looking for concerts to try to see him play live, and the first concert I saw was in Town Hall, which was great because it's a smaller space, only has about 1,500 seats in it.
That was with Dave?
Yeah, with Dave, yeah. Yeah. And just started following him around everywhere. I mean, I saw the Carnegie Hall concert, the recorded concert. I was in the audience, so it was very memorable for me.
At the famous one in 1963?
Yeah, yeah, with the famous solo
Yeah.
that I still listen to today.
Yeah.
But I was going to Juilliard Prep at this point, studying with Morris Goldenberg. So I knew that I didn't want to be a classical player. I mean, it wasn't for me, and I wasn't really getting anything about technique that I was looking for. So I went to Mo and I asked him about Joe Morello, and he said, "Oh, he knows Joe," and he actually said that he gave some lessons to Joe. I don't know how true that is, but he gave me Joe's phone number. He said, "Call him up, tell him I gave you the number, and he'll be fine," which I did. This is when I was like 16 years old, and I called him up, and he was really nice, and he was willing to teach me and all that. But he was on tour with Dave, and he said if he gets into New York, you know, he would give me a lesson, but he didn't know when he was going to get into New York, and so that never happened, you know. And I just kept following him and seeing him play whenever I could, you know, live. And then when I was at 24, 25, I heard that he was teaching at the one in Kirshner.
You gotta talk, speak up.
So so I called him up again, and he remembered me, and he gave me an appointment to see him. So I started. I was 16 when I first spoke to him, and it took me, you know, another 9 years
Right.
to get a lesson with him. But it was definitely worth the wait.
Right.
It really changed my life.
Well, that's great.
It was a little more difficult to deal with it at 25 than it would have been when I was 16, 17. I would have been a lot better off had I seen him originally.
Yeah.
Because I had to unlearn a lot of bad stuff that I had become part of my playing.
Sure.
You know, so it was a pretty hairy first lesson. I couldn't believe what he was asking me to do. I couldn't do it. You know, and
You remember what was it he was asking you
it's
to
a
do?
full stroke, 40 on the metronome, page 5. Here, throw this down and catch it on the way up. Couldn't do it.
You gotta speak up louder, guys. You
Yeah.
speak up, scream.
All right. Well, you
Yeah,
just,
Jeff.
why don't you
Alright.
scream a little bit?
Well, I saw Joe originally when I was a junior in high school. I don't know if that 80, probably 90 or so, 1990. And my band teacher told me, hey, he said, I graduated from Wilkes University, and I still get the flyers from there. There's a flyer with a special concert with Joe Morello and student there at the time, Steve Fiddick. And I knew Joe from Modern Drummer magazine. He was on the 1986, I forget, October or whatever issue of Modern Drummer. And Rick Mattingly just had in that write-up, oh, he was doing this on his right hand. He was playing 4 on his foot, 3 on this limb. And then Rick said, oh, yeah, why don't you throw this in the mix? And you just jokingly, and Joe did, oh, yeah, I could do that. So that's sort of what I knew of Joe. I didn't really even hear Take 5 or anything at that time. So I was just pre-internet, obviously, so just thrown into it. And being at that concert and seeing not only Joe, but seeing Steve Fiddick too, seeing a student who had studied with Joe, and what was possible with that amount of practice and with that expert instruction. It just floored me. So I actually didn't have the first lesson with Joe that most people have. Most people, like you said about the full stroke, So I had that first lesson with Steve Fiddick, and I had a little bit more of the system down, but not, I mean, not anywhere near what it should have been. But, well, I mean, obviously Steve guided me through those lessons, but Steve left to go to North Texas, and then later to the Army. So he said, well, I'll go ahead and go ahead and call Joe up. And I called Joe. His wife scheduled. His wife was very. Jean was great. Jean always said. She always asked that question if you had taken a little bit break to go to school, and then called her again. She always asked the question, "Are you studying with anyone?" And I would say, "Well, no, I was studying with Steve, but now he's away." He said, good, because Joe doesn't want to take students away from other teachers. He was always very respectful like that. And I just, my first lesson, my dad drove me to the lesson, and Steve Fiddick didn't warn me about the time. Yeah, so we got there. We probably got there an hour early just because of traffic coming from Pennsylvania for maybe a 5 o'clock lesson, and then I probably had my lesson at 7 p.m. And then we forgot the check, which was really weird for the first lesson.
The one time you're late is the only time he'll be on time.
Yeah, we forgot the check for the lesson, and my dad said, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" Joe said, "Oh yeah, I'll still give you here. I'll give you my address. You can send it in the mail." And he was actually very impressed that he got the check like 2 days later. He was old school like that. He was very, very respectful, not only with that situation, but also with what his wife said about, I'm not going to steal students away from other teachers. I want to make sure that you're not studying with anyone first. And Joe had a way of really guiding you not only through music and through drumming, but also through life. So he would, and I guess because I was younger than some of the students, he would always make sure that he said, "All right, well, don't let anyone put you down," because he knew that later on, as I found out too, that there's other band leaders and other musicians who need to feed their own ego, and they do that by putting other people down. So Joe always had that warning where, okay, well, don't listen to don't listen to those people. Listen to yourself. Listen to me. Joe would always say, I'm giving you this advice, so that you don't fall into that trap of going down that rabbit hole of having your ego destroyed because other people want to boost their ego up. And I think there's a lot of life information as much as drumming information too. So, and then obviously, the thing that really really surprised me was, and probably surprised me afterwards when I studied with a few other teachers, when I said, okay, let me learn some funk stuff or some Latin stuff from this person or that person. I expected them to be as cordial as Joe. And, I noticed with a few people, it was like, oh, okay, lesson's over, boom, shut the door. Joe was always very, very friendly. And he would say, if you want to wait around, I got another student, we'll go out and have coffee or whatever. And then, coffee, yeah. And then, I was underage, so that's about all I could drink. But Joe always had that. Joe always had that camaraderie with the students too. And the thing that I remember him saying was when I gave him the lesson money, he said, "Well, I hope you got something out of it," which obviously was that was almost rhetorical. Obviously, I got something. Obviously, I got a lot out of it. But that's the kind of person that he was. He wasn't the type of person to say, "Oh, well, here's me and here's you." He would always. I'm not sure if he used this expression with you guys, but he would always say, "Well, everyone's just, we're all the same. I've just been doing this longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was something that people would often say. I read online. Sometimes the forums will just discuss people who study with Joe, and then someone will chime in on one of the online forums or the YouTube videos and say, "Oh my God, I don't know if I'd be scared to play a note." And it was never like that, because Joe made you feel so welcome and so at home that you felt like I feel here. I've know both of you just through online or chats, but just the way I feel with you. I'm not scared to be here. I'm not nervous to be here with you, and of course Matt's over there as well. That's the way. I think that's the way that Joe made you feel. So Joe had that way of really getting you not only comfortable with the technique, but also comfortable with yourself. Just to really know your body and to really be confident enough about using your body and using your hands.
Every time I speak to one of his students, whether I know them or I don't, they always seem to have the same feeling about Joe. They always feel like Joe was their personal friend.
Oh yeah.
I hope I get in this conversation. I want to thank you guys again, man. It's really nice of you coming here today. To get these three guys in one room at the same time seems almost impossible. But as soon as I said, we're going to talk about Joe, they dropped everything and made a time for it. I really appreciate it. And they're talking about the first time they came across Joe, how they hooked up with him. And I'd like to give you guys a background on myself on this. When I was in high school, these other guys heard this story all the time. You haven't. It was the doo-wop days. We're talking 100,000 years ago. And, number one, 2, 3, and 4 were Got My Boyfriend Back, or the Coasters, Fee Fee Fi Fi Fo Fo Fum. And the number one tune at that time was Take 5 by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. And that confused the hell out of me. I'm saying, all these things on the doo-wop, and all of a sudden they called it progressive jazz. And I listened to the drummer. I didn't know who he was. But man, did he play so clean and so musical. I said, I got to check this dude out. See, because my idols at the time were Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, and I loved those guys. And I said, who the heck is Joe Morello? And I checked him out. Sure enough, he was in New Jersey. And that's not how I came to study with him. As I got older and I went to the Army Band and not study with anybody in particular, just from friends who showed me a paradiddle, blah, blah, and all that good stuff. I went to a few other teachers, and somebody recommended Joe Morello. And I give Joe Morello a call, and like everybody here saying, he was just made you feel so warm, so friendly. So he was just a nice guy generally. And when I talked to him on the phone, he had asked me, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, Matt? I said, sure. I said, well, I'm playing 6 nights a week and I have 88 students. His response to that was, well, maybe I should study with you. But anyway, that's enough for now. I have to go back on the keyboard and leave it over to Steve. You want to talk about your books or techniques, or
if you want.
It's up to you guys. I mean, you continue the conversation. I hate to interfere, but I'm limited here now, because you guys are running the show.
Yeah.
I don't know. You want to talk about your book, Jeff?
Yeah.
What it's about? Let me ask you about your book.
Yeah.
What is your book about? This is
the
the book here, by the way. It's called the level system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really the concept that Joe used for accents and dynamics. And again, the first person who showed me this was Steve Fiddick, and a nice shout out to Steve Fiddick. If any of his students are watching this, you're very lucky to be studying with him at Temple or University of Maryland, where I know he's teaching at a few places now. But yeah, I was trying to figure out some things on my own, and I did figure out a few things, but the one thing that always floored me was was this system where Steve said, if you're
Wanna
preparing,
demonstrate anything?
what's that?
Want to demonstrate?
Yeah, I mean, if you're preparing, yeah, maybe I'll clip. Yeah, I'll actually clip it on.
They're paid in the do book.
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
I'm
Yeah.
not like Fox
So,
News,
so if you're preparing for an accent, instead of going, which is part of the full stroke, part of what he did Joe did on the first lesson was just that full stroke, allowing the stick to come right back up to where it started. There's a great video too by John Riley. Someone videoed John at a clinic, and they caught him at just the right point to start talking about this, where John talks about the full stroke. But then after you got the full stroke and the half stroke, where it's just rebounding to the same place, then you're able to get from one place to the other. So if my half strokes or my unaccented notes are coming from here, again, stopping at the, like Chapin would say, it's stopping in the top, but my accented notes are coming from here, then I'm going to have to transition. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go and then bring it back down. So I don't want to do that. So just want to stop there. So those are really the other two strokes. The full stroke is the accented stroke. The tap, which some people don't even use the word tap. I know some people will just say, oh, everything's a rebounding stroke. So they'll say rebounding stroke, upstroke, and downstroke. But
See, that's what upsets me, that the language is not universal.
yeah,
You know, you're gonna do a control stroke, you call it a full stroke, a downstroke, a tap, and an upstroke.
yeah,
And you know, they wanna call it taps, it gets all confusing to the younger people.
yeah.
And that's my beef. We have a question here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you,
no.
Jeff. I mean, it's, these guys are having a conversation about the albums that he was on. But
Oh, yeah.
I wanna talk about your book, the technique. You know, the full stroke, the half stroke, and the quarter stroke. Now, one question here is, and I gone over this on my site, you throw a stick down in the full stroke position, when you bring it back, you're catching it. Why is that?
You're throwing it down. Repeat that question. You're throwing it down,
You're throwing it down, do a full stroke.
and then you're
See how
catching
you
it.
release the stick and bring
Yeah.
it back. Why do you do that?
Why do I do that?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily letting go like this. So
Oh, well, you're not
it's-
exaggerating at the moment. I made
Yeah.
you aware of it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Now,
before
sometimes-
that,
yeah.
you were releasing it and then grabbing it.
yeah, sometimes I'll do that
Why?
just to basically free that motion a little bit. So what I'm feeling is this. It's just coming back no matter what. So I'll release this a little bit because I think of this as shock absorbers.
Okay.
And I think
good.
all and I think with Joe, a lot of students didn't have video. I mean, obvious. I think a few. Steve Fiddick, I think, brought some video cameras in, and has actually some video of his lessons. Most of us didn't. So we were sort of just getting our idea of what we saw, and also using the descriptions that he had. So basically what I think of as this, and I know some people will keep, some of Joe's students will keep this almost the same all the way down and up. I think of it as shock absorbers. So
That's a good way to think. I never thought about it.
So I'll do it like this. Now here's the thing where it does get a little awkward, and I have some students who do this at first, and in my studio over on the way to the restroom, I have an accordion door, one of those accordion folding doors. So what I'll say to them is, I'll unhinge the one part of the folding door, and you just have the hinges just flying out. I say, open and close that folding door, and it's hard to do it when you're using both hinges at the same time, and one hinge is really one hinge is really just trying to go this way, the other hinge is trying to go this way. So that's what I think about this when you're trying to have the hand go back and this do this. That's almost like that accordion door. So I often term this a fake full stroke.
A fake full stroke?
Fake full stroke, because if you look at it, if you check this out, if I have a student who does this, maybe you off to the side, I'm not sure which camera I'm on. Now I take can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I take the stick out of my hand, put my hand or out of the student's hand, put in the same position, and oh, where's your hand? Well, it's there. I call it a fake full stroke because it did this, right? So I think that's and I watched. I think Matt, I watched some of your things, and I think those little differences where letting something out. I think those are almost like the little differences like between Joe and Jim Chapin, but I tend to still think of this as the hinge on that door, and then over here, I almost think of this as the shock absorbers on a car, because when I hold it, most of the time I'm holding it at the first joint of the index finger and thumb. So this is a very loose grip. So it's a very loose grip, and because it's a very loose grip, after that, for that shock to happen, for that shock of the stick hitting the pad, these shock absorbers are sort of going in and out a little bit, and that's sort of the way that I feel about it. But if it's to the point of it being that fake full stroke where your wrist isn't coming up.
And
Yeah.
before you got here, we had a little discussion about that. That same thing that
Yeah.
you're talking about right now. My point, in my view, all right, when you throw the stick down, you're following it back and stop.
Yeah.
Okay? When you throw the stick down and open your hand and bring it back and then grab it,
Yeah.
you're using an additional muscle, which is unnecessary.
Yeah.
And that muscle is going to create tension.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
I agree to a point. I think.
See, what you're doing there is perfect.
Yeah. So that if I do this.
You look stiff, but you're perfect.
Yeah. Now if I do this, feels like it's opened up a little bit.
Yeah, well.
And I'll notice with John Riley, John will come out he'll come out quite a bit on this.
Well,
And that's and like I said, I think with Joe's students really just going back home and just from wherever they were driving from or even flying from, and just remembering what they saw, I think we all have those little nuances. I think if Joe, I think if
We're
Joe
all
were
different.
I think if Joe were in the YouTube era and we were able to get Joe in here
we'd be all
and
confused.
and just close in, and then what if we took an iPad and put it on that slow motion mode, and we get into here? It's like, so those.
See, without the stick, if I'm here and I'm throwing the stick down, and I'm loose,
Yeah.
I have enough control. It's a very fine
Yeah.
point where I have a grip where I'm controlling the stick. When I bring it, I follow it back. I don't do anything else but follow it back, and my hand stops it. What this does.
Yeah. Well, see, that would be that. So you trying to do it that now? Obviously, whenever any of us try and do it a different way, it's weird.
Well,
If I try and
like,
so if you do that, that's almost sort of like that fake full stroke. But it's just a matter of. Just really a matter of that.
The whole thing is not to create any tension. Just totally relax. When I teach my students this, I just explain, if I throw the stick down, she's going to come back. I need to stop it.
Yeah.
Or the stick's going to fly on the other side of the room.
Yeah, that's what I do too. I
And
don't want to do
the way
that in
Joe
here because I don't want to
explained-
hit your drums.
That's right.
But yeah,
Then
I'll
we'll
do that too. I'll just.
All right,
Yeah.
but what happens here, what Joe had said to me, you're playing the drums actually with your hands as opposed to the drum stick. So what you're doing is when you're throwing, it's an extension of your hand. So you're stopping. That's a controlled stroke.
Yeah.
And I learned that from Al really, really well.
Al Miller?
No, Alan Herman.
Or Alan Herman. Okay. I thought you said you studied with Al
No,
Miller.
I didn't study with Alan.
Okay.
I only studied with Charlie Tabb and Carl Wolf and Joe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And I studied
Maybe I
with
was thinking-
Steve.
Yeah, maybe I was thinking of,
Yeah, if I may, the way Joe described it, and he wrote it out for me, I could have brought it with me, is there's free strokes, which would go from like 18 inches to 18 inches, or 5 to 5, or 2 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are controlled strokes.
Yeah.
With the downstroke, where you go from high to low.
Yeah.
Or,
Oh, yeah,
Good one.
yeah.
Good hands. From high to low, and then back again.
Yeah. Now,
So
now
th-
when
in
you
other-
did that,
in other
oh,
words,
sorry.
No, the
Yeah.
free, that's a
Yeah.
free stroke. Then the controlled strokes. That make sense?
Yeah. Is your mic on you?
I don't know.
Grab a mic so,
Guys,
so they
speak
can hear
up.
you. So they can hear what you're
Right.
saying too. Or grab my mic.
Yeah. So that isn't the controlled stroke. That's a free stroke.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
Control stroke is when you change positions.
Yeah.
Control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. You go from
Yeah.
down or up.
If
a
you're-
downstroke
if-
or up.
if your
stroke would be
position
a controlled
remains-
stroke, and that would be a free stroke. Just,
The free stroke is when the position remains the same. The
Yeah.
start and the end is in the same
right.
place.
Exactly.
Well, control
That's a
stroke
free
is
stroke.
you start in
You
one
can start
place
in
and
one
you
place
end up in
and
another.
Yeah.
Now, and I have, like Matt brought up too. I think there is that question online that I've noticed with a few people about the fingers coming out as opposed to the fingers just staying in like
Basically
this.
the same position.
Yeah.
You just have to get your hand back as fast as the stick.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to talk about this a little.
Yeah.
A little bit about fingers. You know, but it's more than that. We use our arms,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
we use our wrists, and we use our fingers. There's 3 different parts of our body that we can use. When we do one stroke, we could be using all of it.
Yeah.
I'm using my arm and my wrist and my fingers,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Using combinations.
No. The way Joe would teach.
However, when you're learning,
Right.
and when Joe would teach, is that you need to develop your wrists first,
Right.
and then you can add arms to that,
Yeah.
and then you add fingers to that. So you need to be able to do this with
Right.
just your wrist,
Yeah.
without using your fingers.
Yeah.
So
The way it's similar to the way Joe would teach. He would
Yeah.
have you work on one hand,
Yeah.
the other hand, and then
And
combine
put them together,
Same,
yeah.
Same principle.
But what I'm saying is that I'm moving my whole hand down and my
Yeah.
whole hand up. I'm not using the fingers at all.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not even using these fingers.
Yeah.
I'm really just using the hand cradled around the stick and moving my hand, and the stick has to follow
Yeah.
where my hand goes.
Right.
It's really now when I play music,
Yeah.
I'll be using my fingers.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
using my arms. I'll be using all kinds of combinations of things. But what we're talking about is developing a fundamental wrist technique
Yeah.
that's going to be built upon later, and
Yeah.
these other things like fingers and arms are going to be added later.
Right.
But we need to learn how to isolate and just use our hand
Yeah.
to begin with. That's the object of the first lesson, I believe.
But Joe also had this. If everyone could see.
Yeah,
that.
I'm not even
Yeah.
talking about the
Well,
grip. I don't care.
But
how
no,
you
no,
hold.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But he would have this as the. That's and I guess Carmine Apiece got this because he could from Joe because he could twirl the sticks. But
Yeah.
but also for that
Yeah.
when a student was having trouble getting that wrist motion, Joe
And
would have
put
him
it- put it in the
hold
center.
it this way. So you make that V, put the stick here.
Right. And doing that. It's
And doing
impossible-
that,
It's much
right.
easier to
impossible
feel
grab
it.
without doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's gotta be loose.
And that's the wrist. Yeah. Yeah. So that was another technique that Joe used in the early stages.
And then the same thing.
Yeah,
over here.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's another question we have here. Demonstrating your left hand, the posture of that.
Oh yeah. Who wants to?
Well, there's a million ways to do that. too.
Well, let's start one way first.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same principle.
Well, the turn. The basic thing is to get the turn.
Yeah.
Turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That rotation.
The same thing. You notice when Joe would play and he played something a little faster,
Yeah.
his wrist you'd have
He
that
would be
wrist wobble.
breaking.
Yeah.
He'd be breaking the
Breaking
Making
a little bit.
tension. He would
Yeah.
liken it to carrying a
Yeah.
bag of groceries.
Yeah.
And then shifting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how you're holding the stick.
But
When
you
Matt is-
you've probably noticed yourself doing that.
But that is
and-
how you receive the rebound.
yeah, but no,
Yeah, that's
we're
what's
talking about
important,
the-
yeah,
talking about that.
that's
right.
Yeah.
Just the wrist wobble. You probably notice yourself doing it at one point, right?
right?
Yeah.
Well, I do it because I'm trying to shake off
Yeah.
the tension. You know,
Tension,
only when I get to the edge of my tension,
Yeah.
then I have to
Right.
do something to release it. You know, not as good as what I mean. What Joe did was fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, he was amazing the way he could move his hand in two different
Absolutely.
directions so
Yeah.
quickly at the same time. I just,
Oh,
you
Joe
know,
was unique.
Yeah.
yeah. But I try to emulate that idea of
Yeah.
you don't have to sit in one position. Your fulcrum can move, and your
Yeah,
and your,
I've,
and
I've,
your wrist
yeah,
position
I've
can
seen
move.
Joe, play like that a lot when he would get a cramp playing like this sometimes if he hadn't been playing for a
Yeah.
long time, and he just
It really doesn't matter.
Just to
What,
change it up.
what matters is the concept of the rebound and being able to control
Yeah.
your response to
Yeah,
it.
this is just technical stuff.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, It's super.
And for the left, I think the big thing with Joe, Joe would all. I don't bowl, so if any of you guys bowl, maybe you could correct me. But Joe would say like a bowling, like one of those braces, like
Yeah.
bowling gloves, where you wouldn't break the wrist, unless, like you were saying, unless if you're breaking tension or something like that. But Joe got quite quite fast. And he had quite a bit of endurance, you know, even before he'd had to break tension, you know. But he would always say that. I'm not sure which camera I'm on again, but he would always say that it was just that motion.
Right.
And one thing that
I used
that I
to
noticed, yeah,
actually do this and
Ah.
say, you know, go around the stick.
yeah. Yeah, and one thing that I noticed was Joe would Joe at times when I was studying would almost have his fingers out like this, but then a lot of times when you saw him in the clips from the '60s, he'd have it here. So like you were saying, I think sometimes he would just do different
Well,
things.
one
Have you ever
thing I
seen him
kno-
play like this?
One thing I noticed is that he had tremendously big hands.
Oh,
and
yeah,
long
yeah.
fingers. I mean,
Well,
I
he was-
couldn't believe.
He was tall. I mean, he was.
You know, I mean, I tried to hold a stick like him, and I can't get my finger around the stick. I used to get like over here,
Yeah.
and I was
I
good.
mean, yeah.
But he actually would almost get to the second knuckle.
Yeah, yeah.
And be able to control the stick with that much behind. And he said to me once, you know, when I was backing off the stick with my index finger because I couldn't, he said, "Well, why don't you use more of your index finger? That's what's going to control the stick for
Yeah.
you. So you want to use as much of your finger as you can.
Yeah.
You know." But what impressed me was the size of his fingers. It was like
Oh, yeah.
he had hands like a bass player. You know.
Yeah.
We need a volunteer just to do a couple full strokes with the left hand traditional.
Full strokes.
That's what
Yeah.
the request.
Just basically this.
How about you, Jeff?
Yeah. 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 Now with
Yeah, he's got you.
with me, yeah, sometimes I'll notice almost that same little thing like this.
Open it
Just
up.
that'll just open, and that's almost like that.
Well, that's okay. You
Yeah.
need to get out
Yeah.
of the way.
Well, that's almost like that that concept. That's almost like the concept that I have on the right hand of just that shock absorber. Yeah, and I don't think anyone. I think with Joe, I don't think anyone is a perfect replica of Joe. I mean, even if you think of
No.
Danny Gottlieb studied with Joe for
Yeah, his
quite some
hands are-
time, and his hands and he has a
he has that
different
high index
he has a
finger, too.
different look to it, but but the concept, like you said, the rebound is still there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Danny came in from
Yeah.
playing cello, and Danny started studying with Joe when he was 14.
When he was 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I met Danny when he first started studying with Joe. Yeah, our schedules are similar. I used to see him at the. In fact, we used to warm up with him. You know,
In that little room.
that
was a
little
great
room.
little
Yeah,
room.
because he was always at least an hour late, and I loved it because I was able to.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To peek out. By the time I got to see him, I was like almost burned out, but I'm grateful for the time to work on the stuff before I got to see him.
Yeah.
That was a really nice situation down in Union.
Yeah.
All over, really. Yeah, everybody got along so well. There was no competition. Everybody was sharing. Everybody was helpful. And it was just the attitude, I think, that Joe projected to his students. What do you think, guys?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get a chance to study in Union, so I studied at Glenn Weber's. But yeah, I'd love to know the
Yeah,
stories. I've heard a lot of stories
Yeah,
about the
there was a
bullpen
little-
there.
little
You know.
room, and Joe would have
Yeah.
people backed up.
But I was usually there pretty much every day, practicing with somebody, thinking of all kinds of different ways, again, to go through pages 5, 6, and
Yeah,
7.
it
and
was
stick
great
control.
just to be in that warm-up
Yeah,
room with
yeah,
the other students,
yeah.
and where everybody was helpful and worked together, and
Yeah,
it was a very sharing,
absolutely.
environment.
Everybody was
And
trying
you're
to
right,
learn.
it was Joe's. It
Yeah.
was Joe's
Yeah,
humanity that touched everybody, and we were grateful
yeah. I mean, he was,
for it. So.
yeah.
I made a lot of enemies over there. I was the first one to get a lesson. And his lessons, instead of an hour and a half, were like 3-4 hours. And he had, like you said, that room all backed up.
Yeah.
I come out of the room, everybody looks like they wanted to kill me.
Yeah, it was a great time.
It
Practice.
absolutely was.
Yeah, it was
Joe was
a great group
definitely
of
missed.
people.
Yeah.
Great.
That's a nice picture.
So I guess talking about just real quick, finishing up on the level system before talking about the because someone said different ways of playing page 5, and that's actually your book and your book. So the other two concepts, obviously with the full stroke, the full stroke and the tap stroke, which are both rebounding strokes. The other two concepts would be the downstroke, which begins at the full stroke level, but it prepares you for an unaccented or softer stroke. So 1, 2, or the upstroke. And first with the downstroke, we just don't allow the stick to rebound. We're not squeezing it. We're just. Now I know with that shock absorber type, and here it almost sounds like, oh, this is my thing, but I never actually used it other than with students. I don't mention it in the levels in my book or anything. Yeah. Yeah. So it's and I grew up around cars. My dad was a mechanic and a truck driver, and shout out to him if he's watching now. But just pull in just slightly, but not squeeze it.
You want to
Yeah.
pin the microphone on and give an example,
yeah,
like
yeah.
with a paradiddle? or
Yeah,
triplets
yeah.
or something?
And then-
where
yeah.
would be used for accent?
And then the upstroke would be the opposite. So if you're just doing taps, you just let the stick come up, but like Matt was saying, you can't, as you can with the full stroke, you can't fire that stick and let go of it and have it shoot across the room. But here's another analogy that I use, also a car analogy. I never really realized that I was using all these car analogies until now. But I always say to my students, if you think about pushing a car from a dead stop, someone's car stalls out, and you got to push it from a dead stop in neutral. It's going to take a little motion or a little effort to get going. That's almost like me pulling the stick up. But if it's already in motion, it's easier to keep it in motion. So the stick doesn't have the momentum to, and you guys were talking about physics before we got in here, it doesn't have the momentum to make it all the way up, but we could grab a hold of that and just follow that motion. So it's already in motion, so it's easier. Our wrist doesn't have to do as much to keep it, to keep it in motion. So
say you're playing paradiddles, how
yeah,
do you
so if
approach
we're
it?
doing paradiddles, we're going to go a downstroke for the accent, down, and what I like to do is I like to close my eyes and just sort of just try and get it to be at the same level as the other stick. So the downstroke is going to meet the level of the tap, down, up, tap, tap, down. So that met the level of the other stick, up, tap, tap. So you have a downstroke because your next two on the right hand would be unaccented taps, just down, up, tap, tap. So down, up, tap, tap. Here you have the upstroke because after you go down, up, tap, tap, down. That's going to be an accent. So you have down, up, tap, tap, down, up, tap, tap.
That's beautiful explanation.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Thank you.
See,
Yeah.
The level system, I mean, I'm glad that you documented it and put it and published it. And you did actually, the community of drummers, you did a great job for them.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
But
it.
anyway, it's just that people just don't understand. When you play, if you don't know anything about the level system, you don't know anything about anything, you just start naturally playing, that's what you naturally do.
Yeah.
It's a simple process. And everybody seems to complicate it. Molar this, Adler that, to the right, to the left, low roll. That's ridiculous. It's such a simple process. We do have a question, if I get off the subject. Someone is saying that when you're playing with your left hand traditional, your body tends to move. And he foresees some sort of injury eventually. So what is the difference between playing traditional and say matched?
I guess you guys, when I came in, you guys were already here, and you were as I was just grabbing my sticks and everything. You guys were already talking about that, about the similarities between the left hand and the right hand as far as the rotational.
Well, what we were talking about was the direction of the stroke between the two hands is very different, and I prefer a standard grip on the left hand stroke because it's easier to do a rotation with the mass of your hand being in the center of the rotation.
Yeah.
Whereas with the right hand, all of the weight. There's two kinds of levers. You can have a lever where the fulcrum is in the middle, in between, and balanced, going one way or the other. And that's what I see happening when your balance point is going around the stick with your hand. So with the right hand, it's not. All the weight is on one side of the lever.
Yeah.
So that's not the same kind of rotation.
Yeah.
And it's much more difficult to emulate a rotation with the right hand, when I find it's much more natural with the left hand.
Yeah.
To work with the rotational momentum, which is what you're talking about, the momentum of the stick, is that we use the stick's own momentum on the next stroke.
Yeah.
You know.
And I guess you guys were talking about some of the other concepts of playing almost around the barrel, which is the way that Joe originally learned, but then he straightened out. Well, Jim Chapin kept that his whole life.
And Joe would have it more in here.
Yeah, that was a field drummer's thing to play this way.
Yeah.
But it's a rotational thing instead of up and down.
Now, what happened is that you have a lot more finger control playing that way, but you don't have the same kind of rotation control that you have with your left hand.
And the molar thing that you're talking about, I think it's a lot easier with the left hand because you're doing this.
The molar?
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that molar at all. I can't stand that name.
Why? It's just.
It's not. It's just goes against what I believe is just the laws of physics, making turns or whatever. You know, it's my opinion. I'm not just giving you a hard time at all.
So you're saying that has no place in
Well,
anything?
you know,
or
what
it's
is
no different
molar?
than anything?
Let's talk about what is molar.
It's essentially a whip action.
Where did molar come from?
I was going to say Henry Muller, but that's that would use the bar.
Let me give you
Sanford
my
Muller,
take on this, the molar system. You know, let's talk about Sanford Muller. Sanford Muller was a school drummer, and he played very well. He was a field drummer more so, that eventually got into a classically trained musician. Well, who did he learn from?
What does it matter?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. It matters here, Steve.
It's lost to history.
No, it's not, because it carried over. That's my point. He learned from. Now let me finish, all right? Then you can put yourself in. He learned from a Civil War drummer. Now you have to understand, Civil War drummers. Not, these guys are out on the field giving signals to the soldiers: retreat, fire, right flank, bomb. Taking orders. The drummers are taking orders from the general or whoever's giving the orders with the flag. These drummers had to pound the drums in order for them to get the signal. And their drums, they had calf skins or mule skins. They didn't have tension rods. They had tension rods with the ropes, and the drums would go out. But these guys are coming from over their head, boom, smacking down, boom. Now, Sanford Muller studied with a guy like this. Sanford Muller took it down a little bit and brought it to the full stroke, the half stroke. But that's not the Muller system. The Muller system is what he learned from the Civil War drummers. And I keep saying, whatever George Lawrence Stone taught, no matter what Sanford Muller taught, and whatever Joe Morello taught. It's the laws of physics, what your control strokes. That is an important element in the drumming world, the level system, period. Steve.
Well, the molar thing is, it's a whip stroke followed by essentially taps, usually 3 or 4. It's taking advantage of the initial inertia,
Isn't it a pump as opposed to a whip?
but it's basically a whip action.
Same thing.
And let me just add here that this is the way that the pad should be. I think you were the first one today to actually angle the pad. We never played on flat pads. It's just here instead of. I guess here we wanted to have a round table or a rectangular square table here.
Well,
We wanted to.
There's two schools of thought on that. I mean, what you're demonstrating is tap strokes in between the accents.
Mhm.
You know, now what some people are teaching is that you bounce and you get free strokes. You're not paying for it. You're not taking responsibility
Yeah.
for the middle strokes, for the two or three in between each accent, which is the biggest difference between what Joe was teaching and what I see a lot of these other younger guys are teaching.
Which is, which I'm not familiar with
Bounce.
what they're teaching.
They're saying you throw it
Yeah.
down
So it's
and you let
Yeah.
it bounce.
No, you still gotta make the strokes.
Yes, I'm agreeing with you,
Yeah.
but those are the two schools of thought that I see with people
Let's-
teaching molar. You're
yeah.
either teaching it that way, where every stroke is a real stroke,
Yeah.
or which is what Jim Chapin taught.
Yeah.
But now I'm seeing, I don't want to mention names, but I'm seeing a lot of younger guys, you know, who have a lot of facility with what they call the molar, but they're using a method of bouncing without
So it's-
without monitoring all the strokes.
so yeah. It's almost like the.
Which is okay when you get so fast that there's no other way to do it. But these guys are bouncing from the slow tempos up.
Well, it's-
That'd be like to a double stroke roll.
Mhm.
You know, you need,
Yeah.
you can bounce it, but there should be a big crossover where you make
That's
it
right.
all with your wrist.
That's right.
So you have control of it.
Exact,
So
yeah.
that's
That's
a similar.
Yeah, and I guess that's the same thing. I had one lesson with John Riley. So I'll pick this up because it's a nylon tip. It's a little bit more of a taper like I would use for a ride cymbal. But if you're playing, obviously, if you're playing the ride cymbal, you're going to be off to the right. So you thank you. So I think what you're saying is a lot of guys do this, guys and girls do, and they're getting. So that's a form. That's almost a form of that molar, but they're. And
Right,
it doesn't groove because it's tiddling, tiddling, tiddling,
It's
as
uneven.
opposed to
It's uneven. Not only that, but
as opposed
the
to
sounds
actually
are not-
getting those
the-
taps.
The sounds are also dynamic up and down. You don't get a very consistent sound on the tap.
Yeah.
Or on the accent.
Where you could you could actually grab and control like you were doing when you were doing the left hand molar. Actually,
Yeah. That's much
It's
more
not-
much more in time
it's not this,
and
but
much more consistent in tonality.
yeah.
I wonder
So
what-
I think we all have the same
Yeah.
the same concept, but just a different way of saying it. You know.
Yeah.
Barry James says hello.
Oh, hey, Barry.
Barry says hello too.
Oh, we got
Yeah, we're gonna do a giveaway.
Barry's. We got Barry's book over here.
Giveaway first. Who wants?
Where is Barry? Why isn't he here?
He's in Florida. When he comes up, he'll
You
come.
can get on a plane.
Yeah. I brought three other copies of the level system too.
If you want.
Yeah.
Those.
Those. Yeah.
All right, let's do Steve. Let's do Barry, Steve's, and your book, Jeff. And some CDs. So we actually have more prizes than people.
Well, then let's give everybody one and we'll be done.
So let's see. I mean, it's fun to win. Here, Steve, you can take everything out. You can take out the paper. Thank you.
These are all the people watching?
Yeah.
All 4 of them?
Billy Ray. Hold on. Don't take anything yet.
We're giving away this Robin metronome.
I brought stuff for show and tell. Yeah,
Wow.
What's left of your stick control books?
This is
Laminate
actually while Matt's doing that. Yeah, this is actually what we would use in lessons with Joe. And interesting enough, he would if you're doing like page 5 just as written, he would always have it on that subdivision. So if you're playing 8 notes, yeah. I'm not sure was he using Just a regular click metronome.
Yeah, that hadn't been invented yet. The only
Yeah.
thing that had been invented was something called the trinome. Which
Oh,
is,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
which is spindles, and you might see it on eBay now.
Yeah, I
But it was
use the
these
Franz.
nylon gears
I
that you
use the
could set, and
Franz.
one would ding. One would,
Yeah.
I used the Franz too, and then I had that metronome that we have there, the trinome, not the trinome, yeah, that one.
The trinome and then the Dr. Beat. The
Yeah,
Dr.
the
Beat's a
Dr.
small
Beat.
one. Yeah.
I had, the first one I had was for 15 years.
Yeah.
And one day I put it on, it just exploded. I said, what happened? I said, holy shit. And Tim Herman gave me one. And he sent it, I used it, I've been using it ever since. But I used the
exploded.
trinome and the
Yeah.
Franz.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Franz was the only metronome besides the.
Yeah, but that's the first time I used the metronome. I was the wind-up guy with the weight going
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, that was the
And
time.
I bought it at a
Beautiful
music store,
sound,
local music. I bought it at a local music store, and I turned it on. I said, "Let me put it at 60." It's going tick, tick, tick. It's no problem. And I'm trying to play to it. It's going tick. I'm going tick, tick, tick. I'm trying to hit the tick.
Yeah.
I take it back to the music store. I said, "Whoa, something's wrong with this metronome." It was me. Just something fun. That's all. Anyway, you want to do which giveaway you want to give away? Alan, what do you want to give away first? One of your CDs?
Sure.
All right, you got the numbers in there. You want to pick out a number?
You want me to pick out a number?
Well, you want me to pick it out? I'll pick it out.
I'll pick it out.
Steve,
Why don't
you
we
wanna
pick out?
I'll
who's
pick it
gonna
out.
Pick out who's going to pick the.
All right, who
Pick out
wants to
who's
pick
going
it
to pick the number.
You want to pick it out? Which number is that? Just the number I need.
15.
15. Who is 15? Billy Ray just came in there.
I know, you got his name written down here too.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about anything?
Not yet, wait a minute. Billy! Alan, show Billy what he just won. Billy, you won a CD. This old age shit sucks, don't it?
That's it.
It's like a delay, yeah. So Billy won. Billy Racing, can I
You have to go to your
cheeseburger
local
from the
antique
burger?
store and find a CD player.
Okay, well, let's do 3 more. Somebody pick a number. What are we doing here now?
You pick a number.
Which one we want to do?
This
Why
is
do we
level,
have-
level system.
Is this
Yeah,
gonna be
let's do
two?
that.
Oh, I guess no one cut this one.
Pick
Well-
a number there, somebody.
I actually got one piece of paper that was not
there a
ripped in
number on it?
half. So yeah, two. There's 2 numbers on this one.
Which number? Let me see.
4 and 9.
I want to do both of them?
Yeah, might as well do both. Yeah.
4
How about
and
making
9.
49? You want
Okay,
49
number
people
4.
watching?
Who are you? And number 9.
Number 9. Number 9.
And her shoes were number 9.
Who's number 4? Come on.
We're getting a sandwich.
I have to go to the bed.
Maybe.
Number 4, who are you? Where the hell is he? I got 3.
Maybe he has a computer problem.
Let's see where it is.
Maybe they left. What's this? The keychain?
Oh, lanyard. It looks like.
Big
Lanyard?
Surf.
Oh, big first sensors.
And who's number 9? Billy, you're 15.
Are we still on? Or are we still?
I think we're still
Oh,
on.
number 9.
Yeah,
All right, we
he's,
got number 9.
yeah, he's talking to them.
Okay, that's Pierre.
Pierre.
All right, first of all, Pierre, where are you from?
France.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Get some digital download.
Now, you guys are confusing me, man. We did 15. Billy Ray just won a CD. Who is number 4? Step up.
You probably left, Matt.
No, he didn't. Pierre. No.
Pierre is number 9. Was it 9 or
All
9?
right, let's forget it. Who's number 9?
Is that Pierre? I got Pierre here. Or is
Number
that
9?
is that 9 or 19? What does that look like?
That's what I read.
It looks like upside down 5.
Oh, Greg.
Maybe it's 61.
Greg Estabrook.
Probably not.
Okay, Greg. Greg won.
What
Yeah,
number-
Greg. I
what
got
number
Greg
is-
on here. Greg 4, and then it looks like number 9 Pierre or Pierce or yeah, I guess it's Pierre. Or was he 19?
Greg runs the level system. And that's number 9. Now we need,
No, it was number 4.
Pierre will be in Boston in 6 weeks. So what is that going to tell us? Billy, stop fooling around. So we did number 15, number 9. Number 9 is Greg. What else are we missing? Do another one.
Right. So what number was Pierre?
Pierre wasn't. I think Pierre, were you number 9?
Or is it 9? Did he have 19? Is that supposed to be a 1? Is Pierre 9 or 19?
I don't know, that could be.
Was it?
Could be.
Is that just a pen mark or is that a 1?
Pierre's number 9.
Number 9, okay. Yeah.
Pierre, you're number 9. Number 9 won what? What did he win?
Both of them won the level system.
Pierre, you won the level system. Pierre, you have to email me. Everybody has to email me their address. Here's my email. I gotta go take a leak, guys.
What does that mean?
He's getting pissed off.
Yeah.
Better getting pissed
So we
off.
gave 3 things out so far. One of your CDs, that's the Billy Ray. You know Billy Ray from and
Really?
yeah, Greg and Pierre with the level system.
Yep.
Let's do a drum head or 2 pairs of sticks. What number are these?
You with Vic Firth too?
Freestyle.
I guess
We have 2 pair of
I guess
freestyle.
Vic Firth sent some stuff over from
May I?
my side.
May I?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Steve.
Those are the old. They're a
These
little
like
bit
concert
older.
sticks or
Yeah, yeah. I figured.
Concerts?
What number
something?
we
Yeah, I
got?
got-
Heavy, the wood's heavy.
Someone
Yeah,
picking a
yeah.
number?
Which is why.
Oh, they're nice.
Anybody picking a number?
Oh yeah, you want to pick it?
You wanna-
Sure, I'd be delighted to.
Yeah, you're the only one who hasn't given anything away yet.
I got 2 numbers on here,
What number you got? Let me see.
10 and 5.
10 and 5 would do it.
Right.
We have 10 and 5.
15.
Number 5 for drumsticks.
Yeah.
And number
those are-
10, drumsticks.
I got a picture of
Those are the neighbors.
Who's number 5?
These, but the wood, like you said, the wood is denser on those old ones.
I got a
Yeah.
picture of
It's
Billy
better
Graham.
wood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I got a picture of Billy Gladstone here, and the sticks look pretty interesting.
Come on, guys, you're not helping me out. Number 5. They are drummers, a bunch of
Look at
kids.
these sticks. Aren't they interesting? They have a
JJ.
really
Oh,
quick
yeah.
taper.
Yeah.
It could be an angle. I was wondering,
Okay,
that-
JJ's
there's
number
another,
5. 2 pairs of sticks.
Seems
Number
like-
10.
Another picture, very short taper, but
Seems-
very,
Guys,
very dramatic.
email me.
Yeah.
Give me a minute.
I've seen
Keep
some.
it going, 'cause I gotta go take
I've seen some orchestral sticks that are like that.
Yeah, you could do that with the classical stick because you're not playing as heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, you
And
you
we're-
play rock and roll with a stick like that, you'll break
No,
the
I'm
net
just
right
thinking.
away.
I'm just thinking in terms of how the stick would roll.
Yeah.
For rolling with the stick.
For
that's
rolling,
all.
yeah.
Oh, for press rolls?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh.
If because of that, I would give it.
Well, you
No,
want, you
short
want as
taper
much,
would
much
bounce
as
a lot.
possible.
Well, you
Yeah.
want as much rebound as possible.
Yeah.
Just looking at just. Are we on?
yeah, we're
I
on.
guess so.
So,
I'm just looking at a picture of Billy Gladstone
yeah.
and trying to figure out what kind of drumsticks he might have used. I wish there were no recordings of him at all, right?
Yeah.
I heard him playing the snare drum roll in Radio City.
Live?
It was a recording. No, it was a
Where'd you hear the recording?
on the internet. Somebody had uploaded this
Really?
a very short little take of like when they were playing the Star Spangled Banner or something, and they
Really?
was able to hear his press roll.
Wow.
Yeah, just very little, just like a
Just in the beginning.
just in the beginning, a little bit of it.
and
Yeah.
they clotted it up with instruments.
Oh, that was good.
That's too
Yeah,
bad.
I mean, but it was the only time I ever heard him play. It was, you
Wow.
know, it was that very difficult. We're really spoiled
Okay, guys,
these
we
days.
have,
You had a
who's
deep-
number
you had a
10?
deep
Spoiled.
throat.
Everybody's making video instructionals now in their
Yeah.
bathroom. You know?
Yeah,
number
So-
10.
there's some funny things out there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to laugh to keep it together. I mean, you know, I used to get angry, and then I realized that it's a useless function, useless emotion.
Yeah.
Mary's book.
So, oh, Barry's book is under here.
That's one is going, number 11 is going around.
Number 11 gets Barry's book.
Well, you wanted to,
Number 11, we have a book from
Barry James.
Barry James. Who's number 11? That's Barry.
But Barry won his own
Barry
book.
won his own book.
Man, how disappointing.
you have more copies of the Barry James book?
Yeah, he's gonna get 2 more. There's 2 more that are gonna be giveaway.
This is your copy.
Yeah, we're gonna give him that copy plus 2 more. Well, actually, just 2 copies altogether, because he's sending me books.
Yeah, this looks like a really, really good book. Well, it is a really good book. Haven't read this particular version of it, but it's an
All
excellent
right,
book.
let's
with a
give
lot of-
Steve's book away. Let's talk about your book, Steve.
Yeah, well, this has the goofy title of 143 binary algorithms applied to, you can do it in stereo. 143 binary algorithms applied to paradiddles, plus 43 unique exercises based on Ravel's Bolero and more. Basically what this book is, Joe had a lot of ways of going through stick control, pages 5, 6, and 7. A lot of the different ways would be based on basically every time, in a nutshell, or as I say, we're in a drum shell, every time you would see an R, there would be a set of instructions, an algorithm. So page 5, as everyone knows or should know, number 1 is right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, on and on. Number 3 is just a roll, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. So the idea of this is take something simple like triplets, you know, right, left, left, or left, left, right. So every time you, for an example, every time you see an R, you would play this, right, left, left, and every time you see a left, you would play right, right, left. You know, basically, it's a 6-stroke roll if you play right, left, right, left. So you'd have right, 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 left, 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 left. So if you had right, right, left, left, you'd have right, right, left, left, right, right, left, and on and on. That would be one example in here, just to illustrate the concept. Is that clear at all?
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
All right.
Very
Or you
good.
could play a paradiddle. Every time you see an R, you play a paradiddle starting with the right hand. So number 3, say right, right, left, left would be right, right, left, left, right, right, left. Or you might say every time you see a right, you play a paradiddle, starting with either the right hand or the left hand. And every time you see a left, you play like an inverted paradiddle. Right, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right, right, left. So the accent would shift. So if you had right, right, left, left, you would have right, right, left, left, right, right, and so on. And there are a bunch of different things like that. Or the same accent pattern as in the triplets. Right, left, right, left. And then play that as single strokes. Or play with flams. And hard sloppy. And on and on. That's kind of like what the book is about. So if you just took 143 of the of these different jumping off points, the algorithms, set of instructions, just using pages 5, 6, and 7, there would be 10,292 exercises. You could use, more, if you wanted to, your own exercises. That's basically the concept of the book. Then it goes into some odd, some unusual things to do with bolero, playing them as eighth notes, and or playing bolero as the bolero rhythm, dun da 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 dun da 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 dun 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 da 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 dun da 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 da. Playing that as double strokes or paradiddles, and then a whole bunch of flam things as well.
That's nice, I like that. You're making me dance too.
Don't see those feet moving. But anyway, that's basically what it's about. There's a lot of different coordinations here, and that's what it looks like. It's kind of an unorthodox book, but it's an approach based on the teachings of Joe. Because back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, I guess, when he was teaching at Dorn and Kirshner in Union, New Jersey, there would be this little room that people would, crowd together in this 6 by 8 or 4 by 8 foot space, and maybe get 4 people max in the room. There would be a Ralph Pace set there. There would be a couple other pads there, and then we'd say, well, look, let's do this, and everybody play a paradiddle, or every time you see a right, and blah blah blah. So it's based on that memory and that time, and that's what the book is about.
So we're going to give 2 of them?
Huh?
2 of them?
We have 4 to give away.
All right, why don't you give 4 of them away?
Well, not to one person.
Why not?
That would be so.
I'll take 3 now.
Anyway,
All right,
if
let's
anybody
do
wants
yours,
it,
yeah.
they can get it at Amazon, should they be so inclined. But it's a good book. I recommend it highly.
Yeah.
In fact,
My Money Kid is a great book.
I gave it 5 stars myself.
Let's pick a number.
Oh yeah, let's see who's the lucky winner.
Al, yeah, see who's going to lucky.
Al, you want to pick the winner?
Okay.
I got my fingers crossed.
Six.
That's me. No. Number 6. Number 6.
Robert.
Who's the lucky winner?
His name is Robert.
What's his real name?
Robert 6.
We're going to do Hudson Music. We're going to give 2 books away from Hudson Music.
Yeah.
Well, who wants to do that?
I'll be
He's
glad
going to
to.
send it. I don't know which books he's going to send, but he's going to send a link. Somebody's going to email whoever won. I'm going to send them the code so they go to Hudson Music, get the PDFs. Or the
Your
video.
book, okay.
No, not my book. My book's coming yet. This is Hudson Music.
Right. As a digital download?
Right, from Rob Wallace.
There's also at Hudson Music, there's a really good biography that somebody wrote about Buddy Rich that's on there now.
Yeah, he's doing that.
And one, I think Bobby Morris, I think, he did a biography on too. Somebody wrote. The Buddy Rich thing is good. Taps, the drum wonder. What an amazing character.
Robert Waldman, he won that, Robert. That's number 6. Steve.
Okay, I'll go for that.
All right.
I'm cool.
So are we done with?
Yeah. You want to do one more of your book?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's do one more for Steve. This is only good now. You're going to get the books in the U.S. Anything out of the U.S., man, is going to be a problem. So let's take a number and see who's going to win another one of your books.
All right. Let's see who the lucky winner is. 12.
12. Who's number 12?
James.
Who?
James.
Jimmy.
Can people win more than once?
No.
Only if you put their name back in the box.
Sure.
All right, now we're going to go digital. Who wants to say this? Digital from Hudson Music.
Oh, you got
I'm going to get 2 of them.
You got
All right, digital from Hudson Music.
Yeah.
Drum roll. Anyone? Number 13, Paul.
What number?
13. Number 1.
What are we at? 13? 13 and number 1?
I have no idea what this is.
What do you say?
You got 13 first and then number 1.
Number 1, then 13, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 13 was Paul, number 1 is...
I can't read that.
Huh.
I have
Randy?
2300 vision too.
Is it Randy?
Yeah, that's Randy.
Yeah.
Number 1 and 13, right?
Yeah.
Okay, number 1 and number 13, we have Steve's book. All right, from Digital, from Hudson Music. You want to call this one? Steve, again?
Did we call? I thought it was number 13. That.
We got
1 and 13? I thought, were there only 2 books?
1 and
from-
13, right? Now
Yeah.
we're going
8.
to Hudson Music to Digital.
Oh,
Number
no,
8.
these are...
Number 8. Gary.
8, Gary?
Number 8, Gary.
Looks like everybody's a winner.
Everybody's a winner who's here. You gotta be in it to win it.
That's right.
Give let's give this guy one. Tony, he's from Tony Perez. Okay. Listen to this question. How did Morello get such freedom in odd time signatures?
Maybe it had to do with his early training on violin. Joe had a unique rhythmic concept. I remember a rhythm concept. You played with scared me, frightened me. Joe played violin, and his mother played piano, so he grew up playing music. If Joe wasn't a natural talent, that I don't know who was, but he had an affinity for rhythm and classical music. Certainly, 5/4 wasn't unusual. He told me that when he was a kid in Springfield, that he wrote a march in 4/4/4. So people, have to skip. It was an odd kind of a thing, but he did that. So I guess I could translate to 9/8, but to have to write a march is 4/4. Remember, but he played with the Springfield Symphony at 9. I remember his sister told me that when he was playing with the Springfield Symphony, he was playing along, turned around. He's in front of the orchestra. He turned around and told the band that they were out of tune. This is a precocious kid. And then at 12, he played with the Boston Symphony. He played Sagana-wise in these gypsy airs, which is not an easy piece. And as the story goes, Heifetz happened to be there, went backstage, and Joe said he picked up my crappy little violin. I'm sure it was a good violin, but and he said he played it. And after that, Joe stopped playing violin because he figured he'd never be able to achieve the level that Heifetz did. And it's hard not to think too that that's almost like a cautionary tale, that Joe was telling his students, because there's nobody that's really going to come up to that level. I mean, I kind of felt that way. He's a unique talent, and what's the use of playing? He's faster, better, thinks of better ideas. And
My
has more
first
music
instinct
than
after
I-
seeing him was to quit.
right. Take up guitar or whatever. And,
Well, what's the point?
Yeah, I know. What's the point? I'm not.
I kind of agree with what you said, Steve. But I think more or less now the modulation, 4 measures of 5 is 5 measures of 4.
Well, when Joe would play, he would he wouldn't break he wouldn't break up 7, for example, into a bar of 3 and a bar of 4. He would just any more than we'd think of 5/4 as 1 2 1 2 3 or anything like that. He would just 1 2 3 4 5, and that would be it. But I remember back in the day when I got a watch that had a stopwatch on it, and so just sitting down, and I said, to check out the watch, I said, just in the middle of the conversation, I said,
let me know when 30 seconds is up. And I just, clicked on the watch, and he said, as we're talking, he just said, now. And I stopped my watch, and it was dead on 30 seconds. And I could say, well, maybe he would, he knows 120, and he just counted off blah blah however many bars, but he had it down. Another time, for whatever reason, I asked him if he ever met or knew Raymond Scott. Raymond Scott, people might know from he wrote a lot of music for the well, not for them, but they were used in a lot of the Bugs Bunny cartoons, and he was kind of an eccentric composer at the time, I suppose. But he wrote a great, a lot of novelty, crazy songs with a difficult drum part. And I asked him if he ever knew Raymond Scott, and he said he met him one time to play with the orchestra, to play with his group, and he said he came out in his bathrobe, sat him down, put on a metronome, and said, "Here, go ahead." Excused himself, turned off the metronome, went out for a while, and said, "Just keep playing." Joe's just sitting there like this. He came back, turned on the metronome, and it was right on. It was in between beats, but it was right on the money. So Joe's sense of time was, unique. It was, it's like perfect pitch, kind of a thing.
When I was studying, when I was so sure you guys, you turn the metronome, he wouldn't even know what number you turned on. He'd tell you what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I put on 72. He goes, no, that's 72. But that's cool. You guys want to continue? You want to wrap it up? It's up to you guys. You want more to talk about?
We're here.
We have, yeah, all right. Then let's do it. We have 2 more prizes I'd like to give away from Hudson Music. I have a winner, number 3.
I'd like to take more questions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
If anybody has
Number
any
2.
out there in video land.
Well, I think we're gonna have to require that they have questions.
Yeah, somebody ask a question.
Somebody asked a question. Renzo!
Is this light warm?
I mean, it's like 30 people, then 20 people, then 41 people. Those keeps going back in and out, in and out. They have a bad connection maybe or something.
Well, or they want to, watch. Is there a football game today?
No, there's no games. They want to watch the Trump.
Isn't there X games or X football or something? Football X?
Gard, did you all study with Joe in New York or Springfield? Garvin. Okay, Garvin. You missed the beginning of the lesson. We all studied with Joe when he was in New Jersey. There's Alan Herman. Say hi. Wave. Wave, Alan. Alan studied with Alan Herman. He's from New York.
I studied with me.
And he studied with himself.
We're all our own
And
students.
we have Jeffrey Johnson, who studied with Joe and Steve Fiddick and, who's that? What's his name? Donald Trump? No. No, I'm only kidding.
I mentioned before I took one lesson off of John Riley, but yeah, but
Well, John Riley's a great teacher.
well, I don't mean to say it.
No, I know that.
I don't mean to
know.
say it in that way. I'm just saying that
And then
I don't want to be one of those people that say, "Oh yeah, I took one lesson off of someone," and
Well,
I
at
credit
least,
him
at least
for everything.
you
But yeah, he
come,
was.
you
Yeah,
come out front and say, I studied one time with John Riley.
it was worth every. I
Of
mean, it was
course.
worth every penny. Yeah.
Then you get these people say, yeah, I studied with Morello. How many lessons did you have? 2? Steve, who'd you study with? Other than Joe?
I took some lessons when I was in high school with Ray DeRoche, who's a
yeah.
great percussionist, and he studied with Stone, and he first taught me about levels and down, up, tap for paradiddles and whatnot, and he was a fabulous guy, incredibly enthusiastic. He would take a few of us to the Yankee games if they were playing the Red Sox, and he was able to fit a vibraphone and 2 timpani in his Volkswagen.
Wow.
Yeah, and a few of us he would played with the Columbia Contemporary Chamber Ensemble, and back in I guess it was back in 1964, 65. And he would take a few of us into the concerts when he was playing, or what anybody else, just to expose us to this music. He was great. And I took 1 or 2 lessons from Ed Shaughnessy, and then than Joe.
They were all great teachers, absolutely. We have a question for you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
The metronome, what's the name of the metronome that you were demonstrating on?
This is the Dr. DB66.
Yep.
I don't think it's still in production,
Is
but
that the one you took off my desk?
but you could still buy this on eBay. They're still floating around out there, online auctions. I believe that the new one, whatever the new one is, has very similar sounds, just an updated model. One thing to watch out for with this one is it does not have a power off. An automatic power off if it's not used. So you could leave it on all night and come back to it tomorrow and the battery's going to be dead. So that's one thing that they,
You have the charger.
yeah, that's one thing that they did upgrade on the new one. But yeah, I mean, that was as I've recorded a lot of my lessons. I mean, and listen back to lessons and
Is it helpful to play along with that? I mean, all you can hear is that.
Yeah. yeah, and that's and that's what you play along with. Yeah.
Yeah, you can put that in your headphones, man.
Yeah, he liked to.
But I mean, wouldn't it be better just to do it yourself?
Yeah,
and then
it's
have
not-
Well,
it all
yeah.
the time?
I mean, that's just a feature that
Yeah,
has.
yeah, I
Like
think.
when it does subdivisions, 3 against 2, 3 against
Yeah,
4.
I've.
Anyway, we got a very interesting question, and I don't know how to answer this, so I'm going to throw it out here. I said, this is from Randy Cohen. He says, I asked the question about the Take 5 reissued 20-inch Zildjian ACIE ride. Does anybody know about that?
Yeah, I might. Zildjian wanted to produce a symbol. Joe had the Take 5 symbol on that he played on Take 5 with, and he wanted to give it to his childhood buddy Ralph Caputo that played with him a long time. And I first met him. Joe was doing a concert in Boston with the quartet when they got together in 1974, and he wanted to give Ralph the symbol. So I was doing some woodworking at the time and making round pads at the time. This is back in the 70s before everybody else started to do them. And he asked me if I would make a frame for it. So I made a frame like the shadow box, and I had it so you could slide in a piece of plexiglass and put the symbol in there, and gave it to Greg. And Ralph. After Ralph died, I went to his son Greg, and they wanted to use that symbol. I think Sabian might have wanted to use that symbol to make a copy of it. And the symbol ended up in some place in, I think, Memphis or something. If you look up the story about the symbol online, there's a story about it. And I guess they lent out the symbol probably to Sabian. Or Zildjian. I think Sabian was going to make a copy of it. They tried to make a copy as close as possible to it. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Yeah, it does. The drum set they had in Union and doing Kirshner, that was the drum set he recorded Take 5 on.
No.
Right? No? Which was that?
There was a set that used to stay at Columbia that they just left there, and that was the set.
historical thing?
Yeah, and then I think Danny came in and got it. Danny Brubeck came in and cut the set or whatever,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
that's what I
responded
heard,
with it.
yeah.
And but that
Gene took it right back, though, didn't she? Or
I
was that
don't
the
know.
DW's?
I don't know what ended up. I think they got everything back with the snare drum. And then
They just set the balls.
maybe he went to Steve Maxwell or whatever.
Is that Steve Maxwell now?
I don't know.
Okay.
But that would be the set.
Yeah, I think Steve was selling some stuff for them.
Yeah.
Memphis Drum Shop in Zildjian.
Memphis, yeah.
Who wants to buy that cymbal? I have a cymbal just like it, Randy. I'll sell it to you for $5,000. Just kidding, just kidding.
Yeah, I bought a few of Joe's cymbals from
Yeah.
from Steve. A set of hi-hats.
Yeah.
Wait, Zildjian or Peisty?
There were 8 Zildjian new beats on the hi-hat, and then it was a pasty 19-inch crash.
Yeah, I have a bunch of symbols that he gave me. I was really lucky at the time. Yeah. He gave me this flat ride. He was really annoyed. He got 2 of them when they first came out from Peisty. He was carrying it all over the place. And he gave me one. He kept one. But it's a beautiful symbol. Yeah, it was really, yeah.
Okay, two more giveaways. We got a winner for Hudson Music. I think we said number 3 and number 8, or number 2 rather.
Oh, we're gonna pick a
Number
number?
3 and number 2, and number 8.
Oh, the numbers.
I got them, I got them.
Oh, you got them?
You got him?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so, yeah, it's an hour and a half. You guys want to keep going on?
Wanna pack it in?
It's
Yeah.
up to you guys. If you want to keep going on.
There are no more
Whichever-
questions? There are no more questions?
I'm asking a question. They, they don't want to, they're not giving me no questions.
All right, well,
I mean, I bought a pair of hats from Gene.
Huh.
Zillions, 1,000. His name is Randy Cohen.
From Gene Morello?
Yeah, from Gene Morello. $1,000. The hats.
From Gene,
Yeah. Yeah.
Gene Morello.
or Marvin, I think, was
I'd
selling
sell
some
them. I'd
stuff.
believe that.
Yeah, Marvin
Sure.
was selling some stuff. I got, actually, I think that's one of my most prized possessions from Joe after the fact, other than the recordings of our lessons and things like that, was the Accents and Rebounds from 1960 or whatever year it came out.
From Marvin?
Yeah, I got that from. What happened was, what happened was.
Whatever happened to Marvin? Oh, sorry.
Marvin's?
Marvin's great. Marvin's got a million stories with Joe too.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think the story was the original copy was going to be somewhere in some museum. I don't know if they're going to do the Progressive Arts Society Museum, but when Accents and Rebounds came out, Stone wrote a nice letter to Joe and signed a book, and then along with that book, he also signed 6 other copies. And I guess they were saving that first copy for Joe, or sorry, for museums. And Joe, that was Joe's prize copy. And obviously, I'm not sure how many of the 6 were left in Joe's estate at the end. But yeah, I was able to get one of them. And luckily, I knew of Marvin, so I didn't know him personally, so I knew that it wasn't a fake. So that's something that I recently acquired. I think that's just part of drumming history. But if there's no other questions, I guess if I could ask a question, yeah. If okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Alan. Well, I don't have anything physical of Joe that he left in his estate or whatever, but I do have a great memory. One of the greatest memories I think a student can get from a teacher. And Steve, I believe you were there too. It was right here in Jersey, in Plainfield, where he was getting a gig in Plainfield, where we met.
Victoria?
Yeah, I think that was it. Joe would come out, I think every night of the week to Victoria's, okay? And I was gigging there 6 nights a week. Now, when he first came to the place, man, imagine this, guys. Here's my idol, one of the greatest drummers I know, is sitting 10 feet in front of me. And, I've just started to study with the guy. And I get up and play, and I'm worried about, am I holding the stick right? Did I hit the cymbal correctly? Is my bass drum doing the right thing? I went on for 2 sets like this. Then the third set, excuse my language, but I said F blank. Joe, to myself, I went up and played. I didn't care who was there. When I got off the stage, that set, Joe had a smile from ear to ear. And he said to me, Patella, you finally learned your lesson. And that to me was a great moment. And I always remember that and visualize it. And that taught me something. When you play, the whole world goes away except for what you're playing. Great lesson. Anybody want to contribute to that, Al?
No, I think you said it. Yeah,
I did.
That's about it. Yeah, the only thing that matters is that you play.
Well, yeah, it just taught me that, why worry about anybody else? Why does anybody really care about what you're doing except what they're hearing? That's fine. It doesn't matter to me anymore about what anybody thinks, anybody says. When I sit behind the drums, whatever I do, I do. Simple. When you play with the music, you're having a conversation with the other musicians musically. The world's gone away. Just get in the conversation and play and smile. Right, Jeffrey?
Yeah, and
Anything?
There's another teacher that I didn't credit before, but Bob Nowak, and he actually taught me how to, well, not really taught me how to read music, but taught me how to read more advanced music. But I think the thing that Joe did, and I think a lot of people have those skills of, you could go online, you could learn how to read quarter notes and 16th notes and all that. But what Joe actually did for a lot of us was allow us to really extend our careers and advance. You know, there were nights where I was playing multiple shows. I mean, I took cruise ship gigs where I was doing 3 and 4 day cruises. So you took a week's worth of music that other cruise ships were doing and packed it into 3 days or 4 days. And I was playing and playing and playing. I mean, maybe 2 captain's cocktail parties, playing big band music, then 2 production shows at night. And my hands felt great. I mean, I got done with all that playing, and I was like, oh, well, practice for a little while. Yeah, and that's what Joe really did for a lot of us. Steve, you mentioned the get together that was at Glenn Weber's with Steve Fiddick and John Riley, and I think Steve Fiddick said it best there. He said we went to him because of the pyrotechnics and the speed and everything else, but we left. We left as musicians, and we left being able to actually do the job. I mean, if you think about it, most people aren't going to require that you do single strokes at 250. Oh, here, you want to play this gig? You got to do these single strokes at 250. No one requires that, but they do require endurance. I mean, there are times when you have to play, eighth notes at 120 for, well, I wouldn't say hours, but for minutes on end. And then, now as you know, with a lot of the show stuff, it's, the tempo's going up, tempo's going down. And the music doesn't stop. I mean, the paper, by the time one chart hits the floor, the band leader, click, click, we're going into the next song. And that's what Joe really did, was he gave us the facility to do that. He basically tuned up our engines yeah.
We have a request for Alan, one of your followers, Renzo Pop from Tech Talk.
Oh yeah?
He wants to hear you say something.
Something.
There you go, Renzo.
Do you have a question? Does he have?
You have any particular question, Renzo? You said you did a lot of videos on YouTube, doing hand technique and watching you exercise and so on and so forth.
That's right. Yeah.
He wants to know, where'd you go?
Where'd I go? I went to China.
Literally, yeah, you did. All right, I think we should wrap it up. I'm exhausted. I mean, Jeffrey wants to stay. I'm gonna leave it up to him. I'll go out for a cigarette. I don't care. You want to stay, Jeff?
I mean, I'm driving down to Virginia tonight, so I don't have
Okay, well,
I don't have too much time. But I mean,
would you like
if
to
you
do
guys
a demonstration
if you
about
guys are
playing, or
if you guys are
I gotta set everything, all the mics up.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
I read a long time ago that Jake Hanna had said of Joe that Joe would have been a good drummer even if he didn't have great hands or a great drummer. Yeah. And I think that Joe was a great man even if he never played drums. Even if just as a man, Joe was the best. Joe was the finest. We argued a lot. I knew the man for almost 45 years. Well, for over 45 years, and he was an extraordinary character and an amazing character. He really was. And I want to read one quote in here in this book that's off the subject entirely. This amazing book, 143 binary algorithms. It says, there are 10 kinds of people in the world. Those that understand binary and those that don't.
That's a good one. I like that.
Thank you.
Well, Joe taught me a lot. At the time he was teaching me, I didn't realize it until I got older and proceeded in life and remembered what he said. And I said, no shit. And I would say that to myself. That's exactly what he was talking about. And meeting you guys, from the studio and from you, from Facebook and whatever, making new friends, and knowing you guys been helping me out a lot. I sincerely appreciate your knowledge, you coming out here today, and I'm tired.
And Matt, we appreciate you giving us a platform
Yes.
To speak and
Yeah.
Yeah.
give our thoughts to the community.
Yeah, and I'm up for doing it again.
Yeah, we will. We'll
Yeah,
do it again, but
yeah. I got relatives here. I hit Arthur Avenue yesterday. I filled up with Italian food. I'd be willing to do that again.
All right, well, anyway, we got Steve. You sold the book.
I sold the book?
Yes, from this guy, Sarah Foot. He bought it from Amazon.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So I want a commission.
Fine.
Okay. Let's see. That's very nice of you, Sierra Foot. Steve says thank you.
And if he likes it?
And if you like it, buy some more. Only kidding. And anyway, I'm going to try to get everybody's door prizes to them. What you need to do is email me your address, and I'll get it out to you. If I don't get any email, any information, no prizes. Now, Jeff just made a comment. Let's do it again, like in a half hour. No, but we are, because these guys, when they get together, we have some good shows coming up. We're gonna have Jeff come up and do a show on his levels. Steve and I are gonna battle it out. Whatever. He's bigger than me. He's gonna win. And Alan, all the time, is always doing a show for me. And I have some other information that you gentlemen might like, and it has to do with Hudson Music. Now, Mike Clark just did a brand new book, and it's coming out soon, and it will be available beside it'll be available on my site and at Hudson Music. Same thing with Rick Lathman and Dave Stanek. And now, Steve's book is going to be on my site, and also Jeff and Barry James.
Does Dave have a new book, Dave Stanek?
No, it's all the.
That's great, yeah.
It's a great book.
Dave's a great guy, too.
You know, I've been back long, man. I tell you, he's been asking me to do a lesson from his book, and I'm going to do it.
Oh.
And now I have the time. And then the same thing with Rick Lathman.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and all your book and Alan's knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, I've met Mike Clark. I haven't met Rick Latham, but I see Dave all the time. I think Dave is, or not all the time, Dave Stanek.
You see where?
But I see him all the time every year, I guess once a year at PASIC. Yeah.
I'm going to be there going
He's
there
great,
this year.
yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely a brilliant man, a very lovable man. You know, since I've known him, he's kind of changed, like all of us have changed over the years.
Yeah.
But Mike Clark comes down here and does a lesson. He's going to be doing a lesson from his book soon, as soon as it's released. And Alan's going to be doing a lesson with me and helping me out, getting my hands better. My injury on my left hand, he's going to help me. And Steve could help me, and whoever wants to help me, I need a lot of help, guys. But I want to thank everybody for your time. And just sitting here, I learned a lot. And I hope everybody else who has been watching learned a lot. So until next time, gentlemen, have a good night. We'll see everybody at my lesson site tomorrow, 1 p.m. on this channel. And let me write my email one more time. Remember, send everything out.
Are we off the air?
No.
Are we off the air?
I did.
I don't know.
No. We're going to go up here again.
Is this oak? This looks like
Bye-bye.
oak. This looks like oak. Are they oak?
I believe they should be hickory, but that's the
looks like
thing
a
is
grain, you know, that
yeah,
looks like oak.
that's the thing is they were
It feels a little heavier.
unless they change unless